Hi, and welcome to the Serial Killers podcast. It's a podcast all about the pests, diseases and problems that affect arable crops. Each week we're going to do a deep dive into one of those particular problems. Hi Josie.
Hello.
So today's serial killer is Thrips, and it's a bit disingenuous to call it a serial killer because it doesn't really kill cereal crops, but it does affect them. It affects barley in particular, but mainly it's a problem for things like oilseed rape, beans, peas, sugar beets and other combinable crops. So thrips, how many species of thrips are there in the world?
In the world, approximately 6,000 species in 9 families.
Okay, and there may be more, and one of the key reasons for that is that they are terrible at flying, and they do this like flying thing. They're so small that they struggle to fly as well, so they're only 1 millimeter to 2 millimeter long.
But only the females fly. The males don't have wings.
Poor men, they don't get to experience that beautiful flight.
They do get to experience other things of great joy, though.
Oh right, okay, and they do get there is a very high female to male ratio as well, isn't there?
Yes.
So some of them are completely female populations. So we said they're terrible flyers. There is one time of year when they do fly, or one time, certain situations they do fly. And what's that thought to be?
That's supposed to be, well, it depends on the weather conditions, but it's generally in midsummer when we think the summer storms are coming.
Yeah.
We do associate thunderflies, thunderbugs with summer storms.
Yeah, so thrips, another name for thrips is thunderflies, thunderbugs. Any other names for them?
Yes, lots of names for them. Harvest bugs.
Yep.
Because they do tend to swarm at the time of harvest. In 1853, a long time ago, there was a cholera outbreak in Denmark. And these thrips were swarming at the time of this really high rate of cholera infection, and it was thought that they actually spread the cholera infection, so they were called cholera flies.
So everyone's going around hoovering up their thrips because they think it's causing...
I don't think they had hoovers in 1853, but they probably developed one soon after.
Yeah, and despite the fact that there was human sewage in their drinking water, that was not the cause of the cholera, obviously.
No, but having said that, thrips do and can inflict bites on humans.
Yeah.
They're not bloodsuckers, so that they're not like mosquitoes.
Yeah.
But if you're particularly sensitive to them, then you will feel discomfort.
So at harvest, you've combined a load of thrips, and then they'll come up and then they'll land on you and try and think you're a plant and try and eat you, basically. Yeah. They're not trying to feed off you in any way.
No.
And they have a very unusual feeding mechanism. So they're not like an aphid that sticks its stylet into the plant and sucks out the sugary sap. They scrape the cells off the surface of the leaf, and it's the upper surface, isn't it, that they normally target, and that gives any plant that's been infested with thrips a silvery mottled appearance on the top leaf. That's a characteristic sign that you've got thrips.
They've only got one mandible.
One, so they're not like they've not got jaws, double jaws. They've got one.
No, the right mandible's reduced.
Yeah.
So the left mandible is needle-like, and that's what they use to perforate the host plant to get access to food.
Brilliant. And so thrips don't cause massive infestations on cereals. They can damage the flowers that develop on things like sugar beet. I think they cause pea dwarfing syndrome. They can cause blind plants, so the flowers are bought on some crops, and they're very important in hydroponic crops, so indoor crops. And that's where I know them from, because at Utrema we sell a lot of products into hydroponics, and they cause massive infestations. And they're very important for anyone who's growing from cuttings, because the pupae actually live in this, drop down into the soil. So you think you've controlled them, and then they spring back up out of life, and their life cycle is key to their infestation ability and also the control. So they lay their eggs in the leaves, don't they? And so if you're trying to spray with a non-systemic insecticide, you won't get those eggs, and so those eggs will
each thrips, singular thrips, plural thrips.
I know that's the case, but I'm going to ignore it because I think it's the most stupid thing ever that you call a singular thrip a thrips. So from now on, a thrip lays eggs
A single thrip will lay approximately 100 eggs at a rate of 1 or 2 per day. So depending on the species, they're very clever. They have something called an ovipositor that they use to cut slits in the plant tissue and then insert their eggs, one per slit.
Yeah.
Or, dependent on the type, they can lay eggs singly or in small groups on the outside surface of the plant.
And then they hatch out as a nymph. Or a baby thrip. And these are very, very small.
And they feed by sucking sap.
Well, no, they feed by sucking the sap. Well, cell sap, I'd say. Yeah, so they're scraping the cells and then sucking the contents out, rather than like an aphid, which is sucking the sap out of the phloem. And they grow and then they develop. They pupate, so they fall to the ground.
Pre-pupal and pupal stages.
Yeah,
And they shelter in soil or sheltered places on host plants.
And that's another reason they're hard to control, because you're spraying the leaves thinking they're damaging my leaves, when actually you spray the leaves and then the pupas emerge as adults and come back out and start feeding again. And so you've got those eggs coming out, the eggs hatching, and then you've got the pupas hatching, and that's causing reinfection of the plant each time and a new generation coming from there.
And seeing as they lay eggs at a rate of 1 or 2 per day, you can't really break that cycle. It's not as if they're laying a whole load of eggs all at once.
Yeah, and it's a massive problem in chrysanthemum growers. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Like 90% of all commercial chrysanthemum cuttings are infected with thrips.
However, how odd is that one of the controls of thrips is natural pyrethrum.
Which is made from chrysanthemum.
Yes.
Isn't that mad?
Yes.
It must be a different species then, yeah. I think the pyrethrum that's used as an insecticide.
Pyrethrum is Chrysanthemum cinerarifolium.
Maybe that doesn't get thrips. And that's grown mainly in Africa, and I think that is available in the UK for certain crops. And then there's pyrethroids, which are synthetic versions of them. Yeah. So as we said, cost to the farmer is small in cereals.
However, might be small in terms of the thrips damage, but the thrips do have the potential to be vectors for plant diseases.
Oh yeah.
Over 25 plant viruses are known to be transmitted by thrips.
So thrips might be causing a problem that we just don't know about. So, and they're a particular problem in spring and winter when growth can't replace the damage. So growth of many crops in the UK is actually quite slow early on in spring because of the low temperature. And so things like biostimulants in spring might help with getting the plant growing and overcoming any damage. So there are 6,000 species. There are some, though, that are more prevalent than others. The ones that I come across the most are the onion thrip, the western flower thrip, and these are polyphagous thrips, so they eat lots of different types of plants. Some of them are monophagous and will only eat one type of plant. And so that's important, because things like a polyphagous one that eats lots of different plants might start off on a crop, maybe an autumn drilled crop, and then move on to something like spring drilled oilseed rape. So they can provide food. Autumn drilled crops can provide food through the winter, and things like onion thrip, they can be feeding and growing during the winter as well. So it's not just a summer problem. So that's a problem.
However, something might be of interest is that they can be beneficial. Yep. They can feed on other insects or mites, while some feed on fungal spores.
Yeah, they can. I think that's
pollen.
Some pollinate. Some feed on fungi, and some are like predators that eat other thrips. But I think they're quite rare, and they're not the same species that affect your crop.
No.
So you can apply an insecticide. Any insecticide that you would apply for, say, aphids is probably going to control thrips. Insecticidal soap like the Eutrimacell, that would be a good one, or if you're organic, a yucca extract. There are a number of biological products that control thrips, aren't there? Have you come across them?
Yeah, there's a predatory bug, Aureus levigatus, which
is that the pirate bug?
Sounds like something out of Harry Potter.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a pirate bug, but it can bite you as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
you have to be careful with pirate bugs, I think.
And you can use nematodes, but nematodes can potentially affect other insects. So
Yeah,
you've got to be careful there because you don't want to reduce your population there.
yeah. Mites, predatory mites are good.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much predatory mites are good because they clear it up very fast, especially the pupa in the soil. So you can get mites that live in the soil and they'll eat the pupa, and then you get mites that live in the flowers that can control the thrips there, and you get mites that live in the leaves. So I love predatory mites. They're especially good in cereal crops because they'll feed off the pollen, and there's loads of pollen around in a cereal crop. So they feed off and they'll build up their population, and then when an insect comes along, it'll eat the insect. Whether you could apply that at a field scale is another matter. Ladybirds, lacewings, anything. Those are two organisms where the larvae are the actual mainly the types that eats. Adult ladybirds tend not to eat much.
No.
They just tend to walk around the plant looking for places to lay their eggs. They're quite frustrating, ladybirds. That's probably about it for biological control, isn't it?
Yeah.
One good method in greenhouses is blue traps, so blue sticky traps.
Yes.
Yellow sticky traps are quite common for controlling and monitoring aphids. Blue traps are thought to be more desirable to thrips, so they'll move towards blue. And the other advantage of blue sticky traps is that they don't catch as many beneficial insects.
Yeah, it's quite awful, some of the things that they can catch.
Yeah. Things like lab analysis and government forecasts probably not needed as much for thrips. I know Wellesbourne, the National Vegetable Research Station in just south of Birmingham, they have studied a number of thrip populations throughout the year, especially on onion crops. So that's the forecasting, and then any varietal resistance or organic controls you've come across?
Well, the thing with thrips is that they can hide themselves in distorted leaves. So if you do spray or try to control them with pesticides, often you won't affect them because they're hiding in leaves. So some controls may just have a short persistence. You're going to have to keep repeating that application to catch them all.
Cool. And going forward with climate change, temperature is important for thrips, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
they love hot, dry conditions.
Hot, dry conditions, and they complete their life cycle faster in higher temperatures.
That's right.
And
they can have at least 2 to 3 generations per year, but if it's a hot summer, then it can be more.
And we talked about corn thrips are a big issue in the USA, and so that might be more of an issue in the UK with higher summer temperatures. Another issue that farmers might come across is their ability to get into places where you don't want them. So they get into computer screens and then just die and get in the way. So if you've got an expensive GPS monitor in your cab, they might get into the back of there.
Well, they even get into pictures. They get behind the glass on a framed picture. Yeah.
And then finally, for me, the only last fact I've got is that they enjoy butt slapping each other. Did you know this? So they fight and defend themselves by butt slapping. Oh. So watch out for thrips. If you find some thrips on your plants, they'll fight each other that way.
Wow. Mating may last from minutes to hours.
Oh, maybe that's their foreplay then, is their butt slapping. Maybe I mistook it for defensive mechanism, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on your research for the thrips?
Yes. Plant invigorators combine nutrients to stimulate plant growth.
Yeah.
So if you're stimulating that plant growth, then obviously you're making the plant more resistant and
so things like seaweed extracts, humic acids in spring or in autumn when you're trying to get that crop growing, that's the key when you need to protect against thrips. That'll help.
Yeah. And I think you need a multi-pronged approach with your replete applications and invigorators combining nutrients.
Yeah. It's a integrated pest management approach. Yeah. Brilliant.
I feel a bit itchy now.
That's it. All this talk of thrips.
I know.
Brilliant. All right. Sounds like we're done for thrips.
I think that's about all that I can think of.
Okay, so what should we talk about in our next podcast next week?
Our next podcast, brome.
Brome.
Brome in all its guises.
So there's about 4 different species of brome, and we'll talk about them next week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Goodbye.